Well, welcome, Josh Paterson, Northprint. Welcome to the Aussie Screen Printing Club. It's great to have you here, mate. It's great to actually see you. We've spoken a couple of times, I think, on the phone, but it's good to see you. Apologies about the time difference. It never occurred to me, which is classic New South Welshman, I guess.
Yeah.
So you're 11 o'clock, is that right?
Yeah, well, 11:20 now. We got there eventually.
Yeah. Oh, well, good you could make it, mate. Okay, well, let's start with you. Let's find out who you are, a bit about your business, what you do, and then we'll get into your journey, because you've got quite an unusual story in terms of how you got into screen printing. But tell us a bit about yourself, Josh.
Yeah, I've only been sort of operating for a few months now.
Wow,
Um,
great.
I had a sort of setup since for about a year and a half, probably. Um, I started as a clothing brand, like a lot of people. I feel like you're either in a band or you start as a clothing brand or something like that.
Yeah,
It seems. So bought a system and then yeah, just started having a play. I thought I was getting stuff printed by someone else, and I was like, oh, the quality wasn't awesome, and the whole like how hard could it be sort of thing. So
yeah,
um, went on Gumtree, bought a setup, and started playing with it, and um, didn't do heaps with it for a fair while, and then sort of about a year ago, started sort of made a nice area for it, and started practicing around stuffing up a lot of shirts,
yeah.
a lot of screens.
No, that
um,
feeling.
yeah, and so I went from there, and then finally got the white ink dialed in, and then thought I might start printing for some other people now. So
Mm,
um, then off we went.
that's a really good way to put it in a way. Got the white ink dialed in. So it all starts with white ink, really, doesn't it? And then,
Yeah.
learning how to do underbases and so on. But let's go back a sec. So you said you weren't real happy with the quality you were getting from elsewhere and wanted to go do it yourself. What did you think or feel was wrong with the quality that you were getting?
Uh, it was pretty handy, really, because there's a local company doing it for me. It was mostly DTG, um, but just it wasn't really that consistent all the time.
Hmm.
And just a few things I thought could probably be better. And like just because I never really saw the shirts, they would fulfill them for me too. And then occasionally I'd get some samples in, and I was just like, oh, wouldn't
Hmm.
not that happy like a customer's getting the same one. Like there might be a bit of cat hair on it or something. So
Yeah,
um,
right.
just yeah, it was very handy to have, but not ideal overall. And it was kind of expensive too. So I was like, oh, it'd be a lot cheaper if I do it. But got to lay out a bit before you get there too.
Yeah, and it sounds like you went in at good level, like a lot of people kind of go with the very, very cheap Chinese type presses
Mm.
and then regret it or give up on the way. But you actually invested in something at a higher level to get started. Before we get to that, how did you learn to screen print though? Like, was it YouTube, or did you go to a class somewhere, or how did you get into that?
Yeah, a lot of YouTube. I would have loved to do a class because I've never really been in another shop before, so I'd like to still do one somewhere or visit someone else's shop. But yeah, just lots of YouTube really, and a few Facebook groups and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's the same for us. And I have that same kind of nagging sorrow in a way, that it wasn't possible to kind of visit another screen printer and hang out for a day or two or whatever. I
Mm.
um I did plug into a screen print in the UK at one point. I'm hoping to go and see them in the new year this year, and did a lesson. But
Mm.
by then, I'd probably printed over 100,000 garments myself. So it's kind of
Yeah.
a bit redundant, but I still learned tons of stuff. Um, yeah, it'd be nice if screen printers would open their doors a little bit more. I guess they would if we knocked on them, perhaps.
Mm.
But yeah, look, anytime you're down this way, mate, come and see us and spend a day
Definitely.
or an hour or whatever with us. Okay, so YouTube, any particular people you followed? Always interested to know if it's the same people we followed.
Yeah, the uh, I watched a few of the Cat Spits videos, but I think a lot of it was probably Ryan
Mm.
and a couple of the other sort of smaller ones. Um, just to find an issue and then search that up and then go through all the videos and try and piece something together from all that, the best of everyone's ways to fix something.
Yeah, that's same as us. I did a lot with Matt from Mikey Designs.
Mm-hmm.
Found his videos very helpful, and also if you come across Cam Irvin from the Print Life.
Yeah, that I watched a lot. I think I watched all of his videos. Pretty
Yeah,
good.
he's a real live wire and
Yeah.
very, very honest as well, which I really appreciated. Um, okay, good. So you learned that way. Just out of interest, you mentioned about whites, but what did you find hard about actual screen printing initially?
It probably was just getting a nice white ink down. Um, that was sort of it's what everyone said was the hardest thing and what I sort of focused on. I figured if I can get that right, I'd sort of
Mm.
be on the way a bit. And everyone seems to want a black shirt with white ink on it, so or a dark shirt with white ink. So I thought I had to get that one down pat. But it was just sort of either it'd be too thick and you could just see the sort of the mesh in it, or not quite opaque enough. So
Mm.
um, that probably was the hardest thing, just trying to and not knowing, like sort of starting from the beginning for the different things that could be not quite right, because the screens I got secondhand, and then was just using squeegees that are already there. So slowly just new squeegee rubber and some new screens, and went from there.
Yeah, right. Okay. So let's talk about what you were able to get. You sounded like you got the whole kind of package, were you? What was there anything missing or did you have it
Yeah,
all?
I've I think I've bought like 3 different packages now. The first one came with like a sweet little conveyor dryer, little ad tech one, I think, um, and a 4 color 2 station Gilroy, and it had the guy had made an exposure unit too, so
Right.
and it worked pretty well. It's got some nice glass on it and that sort of thing. So I still use that exposure unit and the dryer, and then since then there's been 2 shops in Toowoomba that have sort of given up their screen printing and gone for contracting or DTF. So
Right.
I bought a press and a big flash and one, and then a bunch of ink and screens and a few other things from I had a big washout booth from another. So sort of got a fair setup now. Um, but I'd like to, next thing on the list is a decent. So the second press I bought was a 6.4 Gilroy, but it's pretty good. But it's pretty slow to register everything, and you can't really adjust your off contact with each color sort of thing. So it's not ideal really. Um,
So it doesn't
but
have independent off contact per head or something.
no, it's just got one on each platen sort of thing. So, but I don't know if it's a little bit bent and stuff because you can't get it quite consistent. So,
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
mm,
I guess we had a press like that as well. And I know you're thinking of jumping to a new press.
mm,
Um, and of course there's the expense around that, but it's definitely salvific in terms of your experience, so definitely recommend that. All right. And so you've been screen printing for about a year and a half, is that right? But in the last months you decided to kind of go pro, so to speak. And are you still doing your brand, or is that kind of parked, or?
yeah, that's sort of fallen to the side a little bit. It's a bit easier. Like you get you get orders and stuff, but there's sort of it's easier to do a big run of stuff for
Yeah.
another person and just like you know exactly your costs, and you can just charge them that and print it and make some money off it. But sort of there's a bit more work and you got to constantly be posting stuff on for the brand, and it's I enjoy it, but it is hard work, and I still work full time, so it's
Mm.
sort of between this and work, and it's like the last thing you want to do is try and get someone to take some photos in a shirt for you so you can
Yeah.
post on Instagram. So yeah, that is probably just sort of slowly selling out of things, and probably eventually phase that out, or I'd half like to keep it there just in case I wanted to start up a different sort of brand maybe and use the same
Yeah.
sort of audience, but we'll see.
Yeah. I guess the beauty is you can go back to that without any additional costs and setup. We had a guy walk in just a few weeks ago with his own clothing brand, and he had actually outsourced even the manufacture of the garments to China. He wanted a particular spec of hoodies, I think. And he was asking whether we could do the printing for him at the next level, because he found that very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of took a look around and said, do you need anybody to work for you? And I was like, that's the dream, man. If you can come and work for a screen printer, if you own your own brand and just use their equipment at the end of the day or whatever to rattle off whatever it is you need, and perhaps keep your own screens here. Because we have that benefit ourselves, right? We can have a cool idea, or if you think we have a cool idea, we can go and create a screen and do our own project as well. So I guess you can go back to that. But you're printing for all kinds of customers, or you're in a particular niche market, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, it seems I've sort of tried to keep it not local a little bit, which is probably a bit different, I suppose, to normal. Just because I work a lot, so the stuff I do is either really early in the morning or at night, and then it just wouldn't be that handy having people wanting to come pick stuff up or drop stuff off. So do a lot of stuff sort of onto the Gold Coast or Sydney, Melbourne,
Yeah.
but sort of but everything. Got a couple brands sort of coming to me now, and otherwise just sort of businesses and that sort of thing. We've been going into embroidery in a big way, sort of thing recently. So
Yeah, I saw that on your Insta. There's some pretty cool videos there.
yep,
So you've got like a four-head embroidery unit, is it?
yeah, yeah. I bought an embroidery machine about a year ago, just a single head, because we're doing a lot of caps and that sort of thing, and sort of winter rugbies and that sort of thing for the brand. So and so I was using that a bit, and then it started taking off a bit. But a single head, and you've got a few jobs, it's quite time consuming to sit there and watch, waiting for a job to finish and then start the next one. Um, so yeah, we bought a four-head Barradin about 2 months ago now, so that's made a big difference. And I've sort of been pushing that a little bit more recently, just for summer's my busy season, so this for setup it's a bit easier than sort of getting your dryer warmed up and then printing and then all the rest sort of thing for if you're doing that at night or work on the weekends too. So there's not a heap of extra time.
What was the learning curve like with it? We don't do embroidery at all here, so I know nothing about it. But what was the learning curve like for that? Was that pretty easy or insane, or?
I think the machine I started with was probably a good one to start with. We've got a brother, PR 655, I think. And it's been good to learn on because there's a lot of videos on it. But from the brother to the Barradin was quite a big learning curve. I wasn't really expecting. I was like, oh, yeah, like sort of used one, used them all, sort of thing. But it is a bit different. But I think the hardest thing is there's not a lot of sort of commercial videos. We've had the tech come out for the Barradin machine, but until then, I just learned it all online on YouTube again too. But it's sort of just mums doing craft stuff, so it's a bit different trying to figure out how you do that sort of commercially and efficiently as possible, sort of thing. So that's been a
Yeah.
bit different, sort of working it out as we go.
Yeah. Just give me 1 sec. I'm just gonna. There's a lot of
Yeah.
noise coming from what the guys are doing. Give me a sec.
That's all right.
Sorry, we normally would have someone blowing out screens today, and we put them off because it's so noisy. This little office is meant to be soundproofed, but just hearing that. Normally, I do podcasts a bit later, but hearing them ripping tape off screens is just insane. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Okay, so do you feel like you're going to transition to full-time screen printing, or are you going to keep both the jobs going? How's your planning on that going?
Yeah, it's sort of been in the works for close to a year to sort of start to get out. It's pretty good package sort of thing. I manage a farm on the Darling Downs, so get a house and calf as part of that. So we've been able to save pretty aggressively.
Right.
So looking at buying our first property, and then hopefully that's got a space for some printing in that too. So they can once we got that sort of down pat, then I can think about moving on and doing it full time, because it's farming. I enjoy farming and growing things, but like this last fortnight, I did about 146 hours. So and then you try and print on top of that or talk to customers. It's not that fun. It's not much
No
of a
room for sleep.
lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
But it is a pretty cool industry, screen printing, in that you can just have it as a side hustle that you can test the waters, see what your marketing's like, learn the trade, and then if it grows or you start to really push it, you can transition across to earning primarily from that, which unlike a lot of other things that don't necessarily progress beyond hobby level, right?
Yep.
There's a lot of things you can go out and learn, but to turn them into a business is quite hard. But I think screen printing lends itself more readily to doing that.
That's a sort of, at the moment, it's probably just trying to learn as much as I can while it's not that crucial to make a lot of sort of a living out of it. So that's what we're using it for at the moment. Yeah,
it's perfect. And so you do your marketing online primarily because your reach is across the country. You're using Facebook and Insta and all those usual kind of channels.
Yeah, mainly just Instagram, really.
Interesting.
Use Facebook a little bit, but not heaps. But Instagram seems to be our primary thing at the moment.
And I've seen your videos, and I've seen the sock tans. It's pretty it's pretty impressive. It shows you where you work normally, for sure. But they're great videos. They're cracking videos. They're really well edited and really schmick. So well done, man. We do some videos, but ours are really, sadly, a lot of it's done by me, and I just don't have the patience or the skills, frankly, to do that. So they're very amateur. Somebody said to me, who was it? Oh, that's right. I had the opportunity to speak to the Golden Boys in the US.
Oh, yeah.
Jonathan and Jared, and of course they're super schmick, and I was a bit embarrassed. They said it's okay, it's real and it's okay to do that. But yours are awesome, man. Yeah, be up for learning some tips from you about how to do that at some point.
Definitely.
So let's talk about get into the guts of screen printing for you. What ink do you use? What emulsion do you use? What's your sort of standard screen? Tell us a bit about that. Are you water-based primarily, or are you plastisol? How does that go for you?
Plastisol at the moment. I've been wanting to try a bit more water-based. I think just the feel, the hand sounds like something I'd be pretty keen on. I know it's not that easy, but to get right, I suppose. But it's definitely something I want to try. But at the moment, we use Union Plastisol for everything, except we use a Rutland for whites. So we use Street Fighter as our white. tried a few whites, and I don't know if it was just because I was still new, but that seemed to be the white that I finally got it all right on, so I've stuck with it. But we've got heaps of Union white and that sort of stuff sitting here, but we use that as part of our mixing anyway. But we use chromoline emulsion.
Mhm.
Um,
Is that a
and
dual cure emulsion? Is that
yeah,
yeah, okay.
I can't remember which one it is. Yeah, it's a blue one. So
Yep. I think I know the one. And that you get a pretty thick a stencil with that, because some of them are thinner than others. I don't know if you're aware of that. Yeah.
this one's pretty thin, really, but we used to use a um, Yolano one, I think is how you say
Yep.
it. But they used to use a supplier in Brisbane, but they weren't able to get that anymore. Their supply wasn't that reliable, so we changed to Chromoline when they couldn't, when they stopped supplying them. So, and I think they're quite similar, really, a little bit faster exposing.
Yep.
But I'd say it's pretty much the same.
Yeah. We use Yolano now,
Mm-hmm.
and we use two different Yolanos. I think one is called the QR and one's called the QX. Can't remember. One is green and one is kind of orange.
Yeah,
And we switched from, I can't remember which emulsion now, but it was super thick, heavy emulsion to these, and
okay.
blew out all of our timings, like overexposing, like it was almost like starting again. And just found that the stencil was just a little bit too thin, and so we've started double coating now.
Okay.
Made a big difference, but that makes a huge difference to your whites, the thickness of your white, and obviously the smoothness of it. So it's worth experimenting with those if you're really wanting to try and pinpoint the whites. We have that urge to, we started with water base, which just about ended the entire hobby.
Yeah.
Partly because we're very high up and it's a lot cooler. And I've just noticed I'm wearing a hoodie and you're wearing a t-shirt, right?
Yeah.
Which says it all. New South Wales, Queensland. But because it's so arid, it's almost impossible to print with water base. And you can obviously try and open it and put some water in it and various techniques, but sooner or later it's just going to clog up again anyway.
Yeah.
But now we're pretty much fully plastisol. We do some discharge printing from time to time, not very often, but I get that kind of urge, I really should get back to water base, and we print our own boxes here and we use water-based ink for that. And whenever the guys are redoing those, it destroys all confidence I might have in water base again, because I look at it and go, this is impossible, But I get that thing about the soft hand, but having said that, do you feel like many of your customers would complain about that if it was a little bit rough, or within reason?
Yeah, I don't think so really. Most of them are just sort of happy, like they can see that it's good quality and it's not poor quality sort of thing. And I think that's sort of good enough.
Yeah.
But I like to sort of have a quite a high standard. And I think probably the water base is just the next sort of step, but whether that's going to be a good step, and I don't know, or if it's worth it. Like our plasticol is pretty good as is, so it's just something I'd like to try, I suppose, and try and figure out. But we'll see.
Get a bit of permaset and give it a go, I guess, and see
Yeah.
how it works out. Have you ever tried printing with discharge ink and then putting plastisol on the top?
No, I really want to try some discharge printing. I've never done it, but I think it looks pretty awesome. So does AS Color discharge pretty well from your experience?
Yeah, with AS Color, generally, in my experience with them, they generally don't set their colors. So you know how sometimes they may have a line that's not selling well and they'll send it back and they'll actually re-dye the garment, which means when you discharge, you often aren't able to discharge through both dyes and get back to the white cotton.
Okay.
They don't seem to do that. I know other brands do, which
Mm,
means that most of them will discharge quite well. Discharging certain dyes, like a red especially, is generally harder. You might end up with if you're just wanting to print white, you might end up with a very slightly pink color, but that would be the same in any brand just because of that dye. We found
yeah.
them pretty good. It's
Okay.
quite hard to get right, we found, in terms of the ratio of discharge in the pigment and also the duration through the tunnel. Because if you get that wrong, it just won't, discharge all of the dye out. So then you'll end up with this kind of, it's actually not very smooth. But if you
Okay.
get it right, it's unbelievable.
Yep.
What I'm most interested in with it is discharging putting a discharge underbase down and then trying to partially cure that on the way around the press and then getting plastisol laid on top. So, when you print, let's say, a black ink on a white garment or a light garment, you just might hit it once and it comes out and it's really nice and smooth.
Yeah.
You can almost get that kind of soft hand feel if you get that discharge underbase on and use a normal plastisol on top. But
Okay.
yeah, I'd like to do more of that. I hear horror stories though, where people haven't fully cured the discharge and it looks great. All the inks go down, it looks fantastic. But then when it gets in the wash, all the plastisol comes off. Then I'm
Oh,
a little bit nervous about running
yeah.
a customer job that way. So yeah, okay. So Union Inks, that Rutland ink we really like. We use that for our whites at Street Fighter. And also we use a Wilflex one. We've been experimenting with a couple of other Wilflex whites that they've given us because it's very difficult to know, but it seems like, Wilflex and Rutland and some others have been bought out by a company called Avient, or Avient, perhaps is the way to say it. And they seem to have changed the manufacturing to China, whereas prior to that it was the US.
Right.
And we have had some inks that are much smoother in the mix, but don't produce the best coverage. And a lot of people started saying, "Oh, you need to leave those inks to settle for several months." It's
Oh,
not really practical when you want to get printing.
yeah.
And
Like a
that's
fine
another
line.
reason we've been playing with the stencil thickness to try and just get a little bit more ink down and
Right.
changing that we actually print. But I really like them, Wilflex and Rutland, for those. And it's quite hard. We can't get the full range of inks in Australia that you hear about elsewhere. I
Yeah.
always go on about virus inks. I don't know if you come across them.
Heard of
Um,
them.
yeah, I'm really keen to get someone to play with it and find out whether the marketing is actually true or not. But it's supposed to be very good, but we'll find out about them. But it's hard getting, Monarch inks, for example. I can't find anywhere in
Yeah, I'd
Australia.
love to try them.
Yeah, I think you can get Magna now.
Yeah, I've got some Magna water base white that Jones print sent me. Haven't tried it yet though, but yeah.
Yeah, let me know how that goes. I'd be really interested
Mm.
to find out. Okay, so vision. You've got this potential idea of getting your property and setting up a new print shop, maybe expanding into that and growing that side of the business. What would your dream setup be for the next stage? Not the kind of, I want 50 autos in a factory the size of a runway, but in terms of the next stage for you, what would your ideal be around equipment, let's say?
I'd probably like to. So the embroidery is probably pretty sweet for a little while, but for screen printing, I'd like to get an auto as soon as sort of possible. I suppose it seems like the best way to sort of be a bit more consistent, um, and probably stay with less people for a little bit longer, I suppose.
Mm.
Um, that'd probably be the biggest thing that I'll be aiming for. And then probably like a CTS or something similar. As soon as that is sort of justifiable, I suppose.
Yeah, they're big costs. CDS, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Any
but we're a long
particular
way from that yet.
brand of
Pardon?
auto? Any particular brand of auto?
I do love the rocks, but I don't know if there's much after sales service in Australia for them. So I suppose it would probably be between Anatole or M&R.
Yeah, yeah,
I'd say one of those.
yeah. I think you can't go wrong with either of those. I mean, I don't know much about the rock. I'm kind of intrigued. It's sort of like in a design, from a design perspective, it's totally different to all the others, isn't it?
Yeah, they just look awesome too.
They do look awesome.
I do appreciate the good design.
Yeah, certainly more attractive as a press all round, I guess, in colours as well. Okay. So the moment you do that, you'll need to upgrade your dryer. All right.
Yeah,
And then the next thing is you'll need to consider staff because it goes so fast. You know, there are those things. So I think the timing of moving from manual to auto is absolutely crucial. And everyone says and I said it as well, if I'd known this, I would have done it earlier. I couldn't physically do it in the space that we had. But I think if we'd done it too early, it would have been a disaster for us. Partly because you are able to do everything much quicker, but it also encumbers you a lot more because it's quicker. And you can go slower, but who wants to do that, right? So you do need that extra. You need catchers, you need folders, you need in the form of people.
Yeah.
You need to upgrade your oven. We've only just been able to do that. So we've had this auto for almost a year now. And we got our new oven 3-4 weeks ago at the most. It was ordered a while ago. So, and that's just totally transformed our performance again, and our ability, especially with big prints. But if you look at our scenario, I'm in my mid-50s and I came to this very, very late and, relative newbie now. I mean, been doing it for 6 years. And until a year ago, we were doing everything manually and we're pretty happy, except my body just couldn't take it.
Yeah.
I'm not a young fellow like you. And we did get another guy into print who was young and was very fit. But his interest was, he was studying education and he was just doing this as a job, and he was great. He took all the pressure off me to print, but the quality of the prints weren't the same and his conscientiousness wasn't the same and everything. But if you can kind of, in my view, if you can keep going on a manual for as long as you can and get that timing right, then you save all the money and buy the thing in one go, and don't need to borrow or whatever. But then again, there are some people now. Who is it? There's a guy, I think he's a Kiwi. He is. I think he's called the T-shirt guy, but he lives in London. I don't know if you come across him.
Oh, yeah. I've seen some of his videos, I think.
He's got a very small, I think he's got an M&R, but it's a small footprint one. I think it's a 6 color, and it's got a smaller platen as well. Right. He does everything himself, and he just makes it happen. And clearly that's another model as well, without having to actually physically do the printing.
For sure.
The other thing on autos is, I think it is, people say it's really good to learn on a manual if you're going to go on an auto, rather than to just start on an auto, although I do know people that have done that as well. But there is another learning curve that you have to get, because when you're screen printing manually, it becomes, there's a bit of muscle memory, there's an intuitive sense because you're looking at the print and you're actually doing the physical printing.
Yeah.
And you might even subconsciously adopt a different kind of stroke, or you might switch, to pull a little bit more on one side and change the squeegee angle. A lot of those things are intuitive after a while. When you go to an auto, you can't be intuitive because the machine's doing it. you might look at it and go, what's wrong with this? But you won't necessarily go, oh, I need to change the angle because, and I can remember going back to a manual and going, how would I do that? Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's how I do it. Let's drop the angle of this or whatever it may be, increase the pressure. And I think there are those kind of things where the learning curve jumps again, but then obviously you get to it. But as ever, in any industry, we're always learning new things. You got your own exposure unit, but it's a home built one, and that's presumably fluorescent black lights, UV lights. Yeah, they're pretty cool though. They work fine. A lot of people use those.
Yeah, it works. Yeah, as good as for what we do at the moment now. Anyway, we haven't done much sort of work with halftones and super high detail stuff, but everything I've used it for does a good job.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think you'll be fine with that. And tell me about screens. What kind of screens do you use? Is 43T your kind of standard, or do you like to work on I was learning from that guy, Jonathan from the Golden Press Boys, that manually he printed on 90s without realizing that there was 40. Yeah. And I don't know if you've ever done that. That's really hard on the body.
Yeah.
But what do you tend to use?
I always get it's hard. I always watch lots of the US videos and they use there's different measurement to us, but I think by the 43 or I think it was like some 54s or something.
Yeah.
I think I prefer probably a 54 for most things really. We do a lot of just sort of single color stuff. So I'd use that for most things.
Yeah. And if you're after a really nice smooth print, it sounds like you're really keen on quality, which is great. Would you ever go to the trouble of, let's say, using a 54 for an underbase and then a second screen on the press at a higher mesh count for the highlight white? Is that, or would you just tend to use the same screen, print flash print?
Yeah, if I get enough, but generally I just print flash print with the same one, and it's pretty good. But sort of most of our orders seem to be around the sort of 30 or 60 mark, and I don't know. I don't know what point I'd probably add a second screen in there. Probably after 50, maybe I'd probably look at putting another screen in, but I haven't really worried up until now. I managed to sort of get it about right with just a single screen.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I think if you used the 43, it would be a bit lumpy, for both. So you probably got it exactly in the right spot, because I think a 77 generally, unless your stencil's really nice and thick, it's just going to be too light.
Yeah.
An underbase and a top.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and you'll end up hitting it again, putting through
That's
there.
Yeah.
There's always the temptation, isn't it?
That's it. Go one more.
So you're running a business now, right? This is a business. It's a company or whatever structure you have. How are you enjoying that side of it? Is that something you've done before, or is that totally new to you as well?
It's not overly new. I used to after school I was doing like hydroponic salad mix and micro herbs and that sort of thing for some restaurants in Toowoomba. And then so that's sort of led me into the farming. But then I was doing mainly edible flowers. And I was exporting those to Singapore and sending them down to Sydney.
That's cool. That's
So
really cool.
yeah, it's something a bit different. Everyone's like, oh, flowers. But so that was a good business until COVID. And then all the restaurants started closing and opening and all the rest. So we closed that down June last year. But that probably sort of taught me most of the business stuff. There's a bit more. Ended up moving. It was a sort of a side business, the flowers, while I was still on the farm. But it ended up growing a bit over the top. This is probably one of the the main supplies into Sydney, and then sent a lot overseas, and started getting moving a fair few numbers and some dollars there. So that probably taught me a lot, but also it was quite high risk because you might have a few boxes on a pallet coming from, I had some growers in Victoria, and they'd be going from Victoria to Sydney markets, and it's sort of in amongst all this sort of B double of cabbage and all these other big things, and then there's a few boxes that are probably worth half of that truckload, but no one really cares about the couple of boxes. So
yeah, right.
it was quite high risk. If someone left them out, they were quite temperature sensitive. So
Yeah,
that sort of taught me about how things could go wrong too. But yeah, that's taught me a lot. But I'm still learning along the way, and definitely don't know enough yet. But we're getting there.
like all of us. At least you've moved from a high risk product to a low risk product, right?
That's it. That's what always used to annoy me about farming or the flowers in general was like you got take on some new customers, but you're like 3 months away until you or more before you can supply them. So then what I like about this is you don't have to look after it as much, and if you can sort of scale very quickly if you need to, and they don't die. Shirts
They
don't
don't
die.
die. They can sit in a corner.
That's it.
So are you mostly printing on AS Color, or do you print on other brands? Yeah.
Mainly AS Color. Now we've started to get a few people that want some other stuff, but I try and convince them to go with AS Color. It's just easy.
Yeah.
So
It's a nice print. I don't know if you listen to the Printavo podcast. They actually interviewed the owner of AS Color the other day. Who's also, yeah. Did you catch that podcast?
Yeah, I only listened to it about last week. It was quite interesting.
It's amazing. Yeah.
He was pretty keen to order however many shirts he did first up.
Yeah. 20,000 or something like it. It was incredible. Yeah. But they're fast becoming a really top brand. And my view is that from the perspective of production and the quality of the garment, and also their service now, they did have a bit of an issue with stockpiling about a year ago until they got their new warehouse in Melbourne, I think it is. But they, I think, are giving all the other brands a real run for their money. Yeah. Probably like you, have been listening to YouTubes and podcasts on this industry for years now. And I can remember even the shirt show, early shirt shows, people had never heard of AS Color. Now, you're all saying, what a great T-shirt. Now they've got warehouses in the US. So I think they're a really dynamic company. Personally, I worry that they're growing too quickly, which is always very dangerous. But he certainly seemed to have the right attitude towards business and production and quality. And I love them. I mean, we used to exclusively work with Gildan, whom I also love. I've got a lot of time for. The customers don't know Gildan because they primarily are in the big band industry. So if you go and listen to Metallica or U2 or, and you want to buy the T-shirt, it's likely to be a Gildan. So our customers, and I'd never heard of them either, but they know AS Color. And so most of our marketing is around AS Color now. Still like American Apparel and All Style, still a very popular tee for us. And occasionally we do a lot of churches and church groups and youth groups and those kind of things, camps, kids camps, and they frankly just want the cheapest they can get their hands on. Yeah. So we will supply those kind of products for them as well. Well, that's good to know. So are there any aspects of business that you hate, like running the business rather than, are you one of these, I love business. I've been in business for a very long time. This is a new one to me, and obviously it's manufacturing, so I know next to nothing about it. Yeah. But I enjoy printing. I don't do any, I might do a bit on the manual. I did a special project for one of my kids in the UK the other weekend where I made a spectacular mistake. And I love it. I love the process and everything, but I'm not into screen printing enough to print, if you know what I mean. Like I would if all our staff walked away and I'd be out there making it happen. But I love the business end of it. A lot of people, when they come in, they seem to just love the screen printing end and hate the business. Do you, is that what you're like? Are there things in the business end that you can't stand?
Yeah, probably. I like it. You listen to like people when they talk about good businesses and stuff, and they say like people make the mistake of building a job rather than a business. But I kind of like doing stuff too, sort of thing. So probably I do enjoy printing, but I can't. Once I'm sort of bigger, I can't see myself just doing that. I'll probably focus on just running the business. But I enjoy chatting to customers and dealing with them, but not so much the back end side of everything. That's probably gets put on the back burner a bit more than than it should.
Yeah.
But yeah, talking to customers and sort of just being involved in the print process probably is my favorite bits. But as far as invoicing or quoting, that sort of thing, or doing all that sort of thing, I'd like to probably have someone to do that for me.
Yeah. And remember, though, that when you get to work on the business, you're also about controlling the brand and building the brand, building its recognition in the market. And that sort of side of business can be equally as creative, but not equally as creative as screen printing, but it's certainly much more creative than doing accounts and
Yeah,
invoice.
that's what where I'd like to get to, because I think there's a lot of sort of older. It seems like a lot of screen printers are like a sign shop that do a bit of screen printing or embroidery, and I think there's a bit of a space in Australia for some sort of newer seeming businesses with the sort of an emphasis on design and that sort of thing. So I'd like to sort of work on that, like do the videos and that sort of thing. So I suppose it just hypes everyone up. Like I think a lot of business nowadays, people are sort of, or smaller businesses, becoming a bit more personalized than rather than just a name. They sort of take pride in their business. So I'd like to sort of just sort of hype people up about what they're doing and help them make an awesome brand sort of thing for their business.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a sort of partnering story in that as well. When people have confidence in your brand, you can develop a confidence in theirs, especially if they're starting off with a clothing brand, let's say.
For sure.
You know, it's very dynamic, that, and I really enjoy that side of it. But also remember that the super boring stuff around invoicing and accounts and all of that provides you with intelligence on your market and your ratio of a good strike in terms of, you know, how many invoices you manage to get out of how many quotes and so on, what is selling, what isn't, you know, what pricing's working, what markets needs to pick up quicker than others. All that kind of stuff is intelligence that will come out of your account system ultimately. And that's also can be very creative as well and encouraging. So, you know, don't lose sight of that for the sake of screen printing. Right.
That's it.
I remember I have a very, very tiny interest in watercolor painting that I used to really be into years and years ago. And it's that same thing of, you know, how do you turn a hobby into a business? And one of the great things about artists is they're generally poor.
Yeah.
And it's because they love their art, but they know nothing about business and they don't want to. And, you know, I feel like in screen printing, that can be a danger for people, that they, you know, rightly overinvest initially in learning how to screen print and learning how to get a really good quality and understanding the process and, you know, mastering things in the real sense, getting continuity. But the business side of it is just, you know, Gnosticism. It's a black box over there that I just give that to the accountant.
Yeah.
But, you know, I guess it's about aspirations, depending on, you know, where you want to get to. So you mentioned during COVID, a couple of the print shops in Toowoomba closed down, did they? Or they just switched? I think you said direct to film.
Yeah, yeah. One of the sort of bigger ones, they do science and embroidery and used to do screen printing, but now they bought a DTF machine, and now they do that for themselves, and they also do transfers for everyone else, for other people too. But um, yeah, it seems, I think there's probably one or two other businesses in Toowoomba that do screen printing. Otherwise, I think most people just contract it out. It's not that common here, really. There's a lot of screen printing in maybe on the coast or Brisbane.
Yeah,
Um, Nothing around here much.
yeah. It's funny, isn't it? We're in a much smaller town than Toowoomba here, and we're national like you. But we will print locally. We want to support people locally. And there was one other screen printer here who was a sign printer, just exactly the same as you're describing. They sold their business to a local not-for-profit who employ disabled people. So they create businesses, they employ people that are disabled and pay them the same wage that everyone else gets, which seems to
Okay.
me totally right. What a
Yeah.
great concept. And so they brought the screen printing business, but had no idea how to screen
Yeah.
print.
It's
And we've
hard.
been trying to connect with them, and we've had them in here a few times to show them various things and encourage them. And they can't get over that. Why are you helping us? But their, minimum is about 5. In fact, I think they even do 1, which for
Oh,
a screen print is, incredible, right? And we
yeah.
get people walk in and say, "Oh, we're looking for a design. How many do you want?" "We want 4." Okay, well, we just can't do that.
Yeah.
So, but it's good to encourage them and try and help them. And there's another friend who lives up the road a few kilometers, I should say, who screen prints, but he's contracted to print for some Victoria-based companies solely, and that's it. And then if you go up to Inverell, for example, they're actually the shops that claim to be screen printers are just contracting out.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting that market exists. Have you ever been approached to do contract printing for anyone?
Not yet. Actually, once, but I was still quite early on, and it was quite a fair sized company. I was like, oh, we'll try. I said, oh, give us a couple of months, but yeah, not much locally. I haven't really put it out there heaps locally just yet. Just I don't want to um, bite off more than I can chew just yet.
Sure,
Yeah,
especially if you're doing such huge hours in
yeah.
summertime. You don't want to get 0 sleep a week.
That's
That
it.
wouldn't be good.
Do you
Now
guys
you meant,
contract?
no, we don't. I mean, we've had plenty of people approach us to do it, but yeah, I feel it's just like the kind of business that could get inside your mainstream prints and just
Yeah,
push all the other customers out the way.
yeah,
Um, Occasionally we get an order that's 3, 4, 5,000 garments, just a normal customer. And we know the moment we get something like that we have to schedule that printing very carefully because it pushes all the other customers back. And that's one of our biggest issues, by the way, in growing and trying to cope with growth. So I feel like contract printing would do the same. There tend to be bigger volumes, and even with an auto, finding a space to actually put that job in is really hard. So I don't want to do that. Also, the margins are
yeah,
garbage.
yeah.
We have had a few print shops that are genuine print shops but don't do screen printing on garments
Okay.
that we've helped out. There's a company in Dubbo we did, and another one in Sydney that I think one of them was tea towels or something like that. And they just,
Okay.
and that was good, helping them out. But yeah, generally I want to sort of stay away from that,
Yeah.
be more customer focused rather than other screen print company focused. I
Yeah.
do have a desire to and this is just a very loose plan in my head, but because of the kind of growth problem that we're experiencing, and it is a real problem, growth can kill a company as much as help a company. There are certain types of prints, I think, in the future that I'd like to subcontract out to small screen printers that, you know, are moving up the line and do a good job, that it's sort of almost not worth us doing.
Yeah.
And I think some of that would be around quantity and some of it the kind of prints. So yeah, that's the kind of loose idea I have, but certainly not full on, you know, contract screen printing for someone else. I think that would be scary. Yeah.
No thanks.
Because those people are still after trying to get a really good profit themselves, which means you're the one that gets screwed down on price.
That's it.
And, you know, we're doing the work basically, that we're probably just delivering it to their customer direct, you know, with their paraphernalia in it. So there is one other idea we did, now I think about it, which was, there's a customer in Sydney that came through, it was maybe even last Christmas, and it was such short notice, and it was a simulated process print, and there was probably more than 200. So it was a good size order for a sim process as well. Sorry about all the background noise.
That's fair.
I did tell them they're blowing out screens. Goodness knows what they do. And this guy, where is he? What are they called? Oh, I can't remember what they're called. He was willing to just get it done overnight for us. So we just bought the T-shirts in, I think they were Gildan, and Gildan just delivered them into them. They're in Sydney. It was done next day. Customer was super happy. So I think in certain circumstances like that, it was worth doing that way. But generally contracting for others, don't really want to do it.
It's still the same amount of work. You might as well do it and make a bit more out of it, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems to me that the market, you know, because everyone, well, not everyone, but most people will search online today, and they'll come across Spreadshirt.com or, you know, one of those, really the DTG companies using huge DTG machines, and they'll then come to us because they see what the price is. Sometimes it's not even printed in Australia. The lead time is, you know, 6 weeks, and the cost of getting them shipped in is a nightmare. And we find that our pricing is generally really competitive, and we get the job every time when you have a customer that's done that. But we also, I don't know about you, but we also try and every quarter, really, maybe not that much, but certainly a couple of times a year, we go back out and check all the price categories amongst all our competitors, the big people, bigger than us, and try and come in below that. But I think around that, customer service, it's interesting. Most of the reviews we get, you know, obviously the customer likes the garment and hopefully the print, but they all comment on customer service. And you'll hear people saying, you know, screen printing is a customer service organization. The truth is all businesses are customer service organizations. So it wouldn't matter how good your customer service is. If you provide a bad product, they don't care, right? They're just going to have a go at you. But if you provide a good product with a bad customer service, it's not going to work. So I see why people say it. But we found that most people care about that and are willing generally to pay a bit more because they know that we'll do a good job. It's on time. We'll help them, helping them through, you know, you might have someone in a company or a church or wherever who doesn't know anything about screen printing, is the new kid in the office and has been told, go and get 500 T-shirts, find a good price. This is what we printed. And they're just like, how does this even work? And our thing is, we'll walk and talk you through the whole thing. And don't worry, it's not complicated. There's just lots of bits that we need to get through, and we'll help you through that. And that seems to really help with the kind of PR and the customer relations that we have with them.
For sure.
I don't know how on earth I got talking about that. Just going back to challenges, you mentioned about, just the learning curve of screen printing and getting those whites down. How have you gone with things like wet on wet and, multicolored jobs and that kind of stuff? Have you found that okay or challenging, or how's that been?
We don't do heaps at the moment, which has been good for the press we've got. So yeah, like we've only done sort of basic, a few colors, nothing over the top just yet. So I haven't had those challenges too much just yet, but I'm sure they're coming.
Yeah, and I feel like with some of those things, it's like, oh my goodness, I don't want to do that. That sounds so risky. But they're not generally as bad. Well, at least in my experience, they weren't as bad as I thought they were.
Yeah,
And I learned that in the case, for example, where you're putting multiple colors down, you stick your underbase down, you flash it, it comes around. In old school, you'd put another color down, flash it, it comes around, and you just keep going until, what that means is that underbase has been flashed 6 times, let's say, and it's cured.
yeah,
Which means that, the last bit of ink or successive layers of colors you put on, the less likely it is to adhere to that initial underbase.
yeah,
And we never see that, right? Because it might not even crack. You know what I mean? When you do your stretch test, oh, these are solid, but they will come away later on. And I didn't know that. Only did I realize that when I started doing wet on wet stuff. And just reducing the mesh counts is the way to manage how much ink you have sticking to the underside of another screen.
I was gonna ask, the little bit that I have done, I have had issues with just like, yeah, the next screen sticking to it and making it a bit not 100%. Is it just a matter of just having your palettes hot enough too that it sort of semi gels it kind of thing, or?
Yeah, palette temperature is definitely an issue. I don't think you'd want it any hotter than normal on the palette, but you need to make sure it is at the right temperature.
Yeah,
What it's like with a big carousel, something goes wrong, they start cooling down, so managing that. But it's really just the mesh counts and the reducing the ink. So that was a learning curve for us when we went to the auto. We reduced the mesh count, no problem. We knew about that. But because autos are just like, screen printing gorillas, you know what I mean? There's no kind of subtlety,
no,
like you can when you're manually printing. And it's okay, it's an automated machine, I get it. But if your ink is, like if you take something like a yellow ink often, it's very, very plasticized
yeah,
because it's not very opaque. Again, it's a bit like a white, but generally much more oily. If you don't reduce that, you're going to get screen creep. Rego's going to go out. The ink's not going to stick, but if you're on the right mesh count. So we discovered quite early that we need to reduce just about every ink, especially
okay,
a white. And even a good Wilflex or the Street Fighter Rutland white you mentioned, we still reduce that.
I was
We wouldn't
gonna,
reduce that for a manual.
yeah,
There's no need, right?
oh, you wouldn't, yeah,
No, but for the auto, you really have to.
okay,
So that was the way we got around that. So the ink deposit, they never, unless something goes wrong, that I've never seen them clean the screens, even on a sim process. As long a 250 garment sim process, you're going to need to clean the screens, but generally you'll be fine. So yeah, thinning the ink, reducing the ink, I should say, getting a higher mesh count tends to allow you to manage that. The
okay,
big issue you may have is where you've got butt registration on the other colors. And I learned recently, because there you'll go, oh, it's really starting to kind of bleed in a little bit, bleed across. What I learned is that you can just put a tiny hairline choke between those colors, like 0.25 or even 0.1, and that will
okay,
reduce any kind of cross contamination of those inks.
Right.
And it seems to work fine. But yeah, I'd recommend giving it a go. I mean, the difficulty is, you know, you go, oh, I'd like to try this, I'd like to try that. You're doing 140 hours every
Yeah,
2 weeks, you know, in your normal, in your regular job, and then you've got to print for your customers. But
that's it.
fine, if you do have a little bit of time, I'd say just do a sim process, or, you know, a couple of half tones, or CMYK, or try some wet on wet, because
Yeah.
it's not as scary as it seems. I
Okay.
love sim process,
Yeah.
depending on, you know, the kind of quality of the artwork. But I love it because it's not hard to register. I know it might sound a bit
Okay.
bonkers, but it's much more forgiving in that. And obviously, you want to get the rego dialed in, and get the colors right. But it's really cool because if you've got, you know, let's say a 9-color sim process running, you you can start to kind of control the quality of the colors because of the way sim process works, or even CMYK, which is just simulated process, but just 4 colors with a white base. That's all it
Yeah.
is. You can go, oh, you know what, the green, you know, I did one the other day. I think it was a 6-color. This is a personal project, and the green, it didn't have a green in it, but it was meant to have a, you know, the way it worked brought a green. It was just a little bit too dark. I think I'll hit the yellow another time, or I'll reduce the blue, or the whatever color, or the black's actually ruining that green. I'll just hit that a bit lighter, or even reduce the ink, or only do 1 stroke on it. And you can really play with the quality of the print. That's super fun.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Just being able to kind of talk it, you know, a little bit back and forwards. So you mentioned you haven't done any halftones, or you haven't done much by way of halftones. That would be something that you should really get into, I'd say.
Mm. Which that's yeah, exactly how you said. Like as soon as sort of the bigger color counts come in, that's I start pushing them towards the DTF sort of route, just because the setup times I don't really have the time to do it. But um, definitely definitely keen to do it. It's just rained recently, so that's how we got on here. But
Yeah.
hoping that this weekend might give me some time to catch up on a few things, and I've got some artwork sitting there that I'd like to do some practice on. So maybe I'll get a chance to do some of that this weekend. Be awesome.
Yeah. Oh, definitely go for it, man. And how do you do your artwork? You do all your own artwork? Like, by that I mean, do you create your own separations? Are you doing designs for customers? Do they have everything ready for you? How do you manage that side of the business?
Um, haven't I've been pretty lucky so far. Most people have vector artwork for me. Otherwise, I'll just get it vectorized. But I do the seps, but I'm not very good at it yet. I can do basic stuff, but that was actually a question I had for you. If you guys did yours, or if you outsourced it to anyone. Um, but at the moment, um, I can do the sort of basic stuff for seps really.
Yeah.
Uh,
With us, we do, I'd say 90% of it, maybe even a little bit more. Um, we only will work with a vector. So if the customers come forward with a JPEG, we will charge them a fee unless it's, you know, super easy and it just
yeah,
traces without any issue, wouldn't charge them for that. But we will charge them a fee to do a rebuild, and we'll send that back as a proof. If it's and we just know what chokes to put on, you know, for this kind, that kind, because we're using an auto to maximize the performance of an auto. You don't really want to, like, these kind of presses will do a step back, so you can put one screen in, let's say white, and, you know, print it, flash it, step back, print it, just like kind of like you would on a carousel, except you don't step back. But obviously that's slows it down dramatically, right?
yeah,
So with a let's say a white, for us, anything above sort of 30, 50 garments, we'll use 2 screens.
okay,
And they if it's a white that you want, they could be exactly the same size separations, but we make them 0.25 of a point. So the highlight white's 0.25 of a point smaller, because the speed of registration is like almost clamp it down and it's done. And it's almost undetectable to the naked eye, right? So we know exactly what choke we want to put on. Oh, this is that kind of underbase for this kind of color. We'll put it 0.7. So we're really quick at those kind of separations. But when it's a sim process, we do one of a few things. One is we might outsource it to graphic source, who have been pretty good to us. Like I don't think there was one that I thought was a bit dubious, but the good thing about them is they'll give you the Pantones, and that's critical. And they've, as I say, they've been very good. We've started using seps.io. They have just started a service. They're trialing a service, and we're one of their trial customers, where you can do one-off projects with them rather than paying a monthly fee. And that's just brand new with them. I don't even know if that's public knowledge, but anyway, there won't be many people listening anyway. And occasionally we've got a digitizer. We might use them. I think they're Chinese, and they're okay. We've done them for a few jobs. The last resort, well, actually, no, the first resort, which usually ends up getting trashed, is to use what is it called? Separation Studio.
Oh, yeah.
Come across that, yeah. But we've had varying results with it, pure and simple. But it is good. Don't get me wrong. It's if we want to do a basic simulated process, it's pretty good. But if it's got a lot of color in it, I'd be reluctant to really use that. CMYK just do straight out of Adobe Illustrator using the RIP, and that's very easy. So that's how we do ours, mostly in-house. If we just don't have time, we might put something that's got 8 colors out, normal spot process, just because it's quicker to get someone else to do it. And normally they're really quick, those companies. 2 days would be slow, Some people do them in hours and get them back, which is great. The problem with it is you then incur a cost that you think about before you do the deal with the customer.
I've because that's what I've sort of been leaning towards, is maybe setting something up with graphic source, and using them for a bit more, for like proofing or mock-ups, and separations too, maybe. But I haven't looked recently, but it did seem quite pricey, and it was just another cost that I have to try and convince the customer to eat, I suppose. But I include it all together. I don't have like a setup fee or anything, or screen fee, because then people have questions about it. But it's just another thing you have to try and add on top of the other price. So, but they'll have to revisit that maybe and see what their price is recently.
And again, back to business. Sorry about the noise. There are lots of variables in the business end that you can play with that I don't think a lot of people realize. So if AS Color put their prices up, which they've just done yesterday, I think, which, fair enough, I get it. Then most screen printers will go, right, I'll just add that cost to my general cost per tee, and include it in the charge, and that's okay. But customers get narky about that, in my experience. Why do they keep going up? With COVID and the cost of ink and the garments are going up and everything. But what we have done is play with other tolerances. So initially our minimum order quantity was 15. And then we went down to 12, which is a huge mistake. Then we went up to 16, simply because we had an 8 platinum carousel. It's
Go
just,
around twice.
um, and then the prices all started to change and COVID hit, and it all started getting a bit interesting. And what I did this in business years ago. I used to run or own and run an internet company and an IT company in the 1990s when IT was vertical in business, and it just went like that. It was incredible. But there came a point where all those wonderful, loyal customers that we had in the first 2 or 3 years that were worth nothing
Yeah,
weren't able to grow and give us more, and we needed to hit a bigger market. And so I actually put the rates up in that business quite dramatically, and all those little customers went, we've been with you for years, we can't afford this. And we were like, yeah, sorry, but we're a going company, it costs. And we lost all that clientele, which
yeah.
actually was the strategy. Not
Okay.
that I didn't want to do the rotten on them. It's just that that was necessary to survive. And it put
Yeah.
us in the next level up in the pyramid
Okay.
in terms of value of customers. And I tried that with this business. I said, right, the prices are going up. We can try and delimit the cheapos that come in and all they care about is price, like bands, for
Yeah.
example, by putting the price up, or we can just increase the minimum. And what we
Okay.
decided to do is to increase the minimum to 20 and keep the price the same. And what that meant was we could actually go to our clientele and say, all the prices are going up out there. We're not increasing our prices,
Okay.
but the minimum's grown. So you're getting the same value, getting the same bang for your buck per garment. You just need to buy a few more. And it's just psychology, right?
Yeah.
Oh, they're not putting their prices up, but actually you're giving me more money in the process,
Yeah.
right? It's just business. But
Yep.
it did mean that we lost all those other little customers that never need 20. And that's okay. I was cool with that.
For sure.
So there's another thing that you can, you get that kind of science around the business and the money and looking at the stats, as it were, of your performance. You can start to kind of talk things and turn that one up and turn that one down a bit until you've got a model that continues to bring in the money. And there is quite good margins in screen printing. I
Yeah.
mean, it's pretty extraordinary. Like I said earlier, I've never been in manufacturing, but if I had known what I know now about it, I'd have started 30 years ago.
That's
I'd have
it.
started at your age and stage, for
Yep.
sure. Yeah, so that's how we manage that.
Okay.
But with, I don't know if you have this problem. We get people come on and, they fill in the form and submit, and the artwork's there. And, the first thing you look at is, who is it? Where are they? If
Yeah.
it's WA, because for some reason, we've got a bunch of customers in WA. But there you go. Yeah. And then how many is it? And what's the artwork look like? So if
Yeah.
it's an order comes in for 20 and you open up the artwork and it's a full color print,
Yep.
unless you got DTF or DTG, you can't do anything.
Yeah.
And we go back and say, look, for this kind of print, we'd normally expect to do 200, 250 garments. That's obviously no good to you. We can look at reducing number of colors, or here's someone else you can go to, and we just literally hand them off. So that's the other problem, is you might get someone come on for whatever the minimum is that you do, but it's a full color print that, they just don't understand how they could go to spreadshirt.com and buy one for
Yeah.
$40 or whatever it is, but they can't come to us for 20 for that. It's, the customers don't know this stuff. They don't know generally what screen printing is, and in my experience. And so that side of it's tricky as well, getting that right. So does your current press have micro reg on it?
Nah, it doesn't. No.
So you've just got to manually reconfigure that and then screw it down very gently.
Yeah, and then try not to move it as you screw it down, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's frustrating. I mean, I know I've been there and I've done that, but you can get it. I mean, that's the way it was done
Yeah.
for years before micro reg came out. but you're thinking and at least hoping to go to maybe a Vastex B2000 at some point. So that, if you do that, that's all going to completely change for you. And that would
Yeah.
be wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm definitely pretty excited for that. But we yeah, just having bought the forehead embroidery machine and stuff, the screen, the piggy bank's a little bit
Yeah, for sure.
sad at the moment. But I think that'll definitely help, especially just setting things up a bit quicker, make a massive difference.
Oh yeah, you'd be able to do a lot more with that. In terms of the off contact, per print head, in terms of the pitch of the screen, as well as the standard left, right, back, front micro edge, and it's very precise. Like you really only have to tweak it a tiny once you've got it dialed in,
Yeah.
tiny bit to get that right. Do you have a template system that you use to line the film positive up on the screen? Like, how do you do that?
I do that on the press. Like, so in my artwork, I'll set it up on like a transparency where it should go on the shirt, and then line that up on the platen, and then put the screen in the carousel, and then put it down and sort of stick it to the screen like that.
Yeah.
And it puts it in the right spot. I've seen other people have like a template on a tabletop type thing, but it seems to work all right having it sort of half in the artwork, half manually, sort of thing.
If you get a press, I don't know, is your press got a back clamp on the head, or has it got side clamps?
It's got side clamps.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, if you go to a Vastex, you might have a back clamp, so you will have a little bit more freedom, actually, just obviously to slide the screen left and right before you micro it. But what I've found is if you have like a template where before you burn the screen, before you shoot the screen, if you have a template set up so you can position that artwork perfectly in the same place on every screen before you burn, and then do what you were suggesting on the actual press, the press tends to stay closer to the de minimis registration. By that I mean, if you don't do that, every head's going to be out each time, which is fine. You register it, but then when you come to register the next one, it's all out before you bring it in again. So excuse me, the more accurate you get that when you go to burn your screen, the less you'll have to move all the micros, and so you're only ever making tiny adjustments.
Okay.
So working at it at that level will increase the speed that you're able to actually register a job. But a quick anecdote for you, just to bring some levity, not that we need it. Years ago, we had an Adtech, an Adtech press. It was a 4-head press with 3 platens. And we had a lovely man working for us. He was just a student and just needed to earn more money. He was from Myanmar. And he was just a really hard worker. He was brilliant. And we had this 4-color job and no micros. And, it took me ages to get this dialed in. I was at the point of throwing the screens out the door, I was so angry. And eventually we nailed it. And this friend, whose name was Joseph, was so happy, and we got printing, we got the thing warmed up, we got printing, and he just bent down at the wrong time. And one of the screens clocked him on the head, and he was perfectly fine, but the reg was gone. I remember we just went, let's do this tomorrow.
Sometimes it's better just to come back.
Yeah, for sure. With a Vastex or any of those ones with micro edge, you just dial it back in, but you'll certainly, I love that and benefit from that when you get to it. So your preference would be to go for a 6.6, I think you'd said in a text or something, or an email. If you can get to an 8.8, that would be good. But we did a job recently. What was it? I think it was a 3-color print on a polo, and the guys did it on the manual. And it took minutes, like maybe 7 minutes to get a garment off just on a 3-color print. So if you then add that to a 7-color or an 8-color print, it's going to
That's
take
it.
a lot. You know, when you get to that point, you say, wow, this is great. I can do an 8-color simulated process, let's say. Boy, it's slow.
But do you
Yeah,
want to?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And you're trying to squeegee 90T screens.
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
It's hard going. So maybe, yeah, 6.6 would be good.
Then it's an excuse that can't do anymore.
Well, there you go. That's right. Get the 8.8.
Yeah.
Okay. We're kind of running out of time. I'm absolutely loving this conversation, and we probably should continue it in another session, you know, in a few months or whatever, to see, you know, how things are going. Did you have any questions or tips? Do you have any tips or traps to look out for people?
I did have a little bit of a list here that I could,
Oh, great.
because I thought when I get to it, I probably won't remember. What we talked about seps. What chemicals do you guys usually use for cleanup, like on press or afterwards?
On press, to do a press wash, we use one of two things. One is just thinners, industrial thinners,
Okay.
which work really well, but they dry out real quick, right? Like, because they evaporate real quick. So that's the downside of them. But the real positive of using thinners is that the other chemical that we use is a soya-based one. I'd have to go and have a look what it is. And it leaves a real grease on the screen. So if you have to retape, the tape won't adhere to the screen, but thinners, it will.
Okay.
That's how we do that. When we come to actually clean screens to reclaim them, what we use, because it's plastisol, we don't want any of that to go down in the waterways, you know, either via sewage or any other waterways. We don't put anything down the waterways. We use white spirit to remove the ink, clean the screen, and obviously that evaporates.
Yeah.
So that resolves that, and we end up with oily rags, which we dispose of. And then we use a dip tank. And again, I can't remember the product that we put in there, but it's actually the commercial one that you'd put in the whole, you know, the really big screen reclaiming machines. You just sort of feed the screen and it comes out.
The easy way product or different?
It's not the easy way one, but it's the same kind.
Okay.
I'll maybe pop it up in the description when I find out what it is.
Yep.
And we just buy huge drums of that. It lasts us a couple of months or a bit longer, maybe 4 or 5 months. And that, you know, is enough to remove the emulsion and allow us to just blow that out with the jet wash. But that chemical we put in a big IBC. You'll know what an IBC is because you're on the land. We put it in one of those, and that gets uplifted every quarter and taken to the Hunter Valley and cleansed, you know, chemically cleansed and treated so that doesn't go into the waterways. So we're able to kind of separate the bad chemicals environmentally from the ones that are okay. Degreaser we put down normally, and even the dehazer that we use becomes totally inert when it touches water. That's the really heavy one, and so that's okay for the sewage as well. Yeah, but they're the chemicals we use to clean the screens. But thinners is pretty good. And
yeah, that's what I use at the moment. I know what you mean with that, because with one of the systems I got a lot of their chemicals and stuff from them, from one of the local shops, and they had it was a bit rubbed off on the drum, but it was like a press wash, and I was like, oh yeah, so it is the proper thing. And like you said, it just leaves like a film there, and then I was like, this sucks. You can't try and use it again or whatever, but it does clean the ink.
Expensive. It does, but it's expensive as well. White spirit is cheap. Thinners, you know, don't go to Bunnings, but you can buy, you know, commercial thinners online that are much cheaper. But white spirit is dirt cheap. The only thing is it's got obviously it's bit nauseous to kind of inhale all the time. So we do have masks for people as well. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The only tip I it was sort of an accident just because we're a bit limited for space, is the sort of ink mixing areas sort of next to the press, so that you can sort of, it ends up keeping the shirts and stuff away from the ink and stuff, so you can sort of spin your screen around and clean it off right next to the area that you
Okay.
keep your
That's a good tip. Yeah.
inks and stuff.
So
And
clean on press rather
yeah,
than
like
go elsewhere.
yeah, the screen will just stays there, and I just sort of put it down with like a corner on one of the platens to hold it,
Yeah.
and then I'll scrape it
Yeah.
off, and yeah, it's just sort of from one side to the other. It's nice and easy. Then, and all the ink and stuff stays in one area and doesn't get close to the shirts. So
Which is the worst nightmare for a screen printer, isn't it? You just
yeah,
printed a 6-color job and you drop a squeegee on a pile of shirts or something.
that's it.
Cleaning
So
screens on press on an auto, unless you're doing a press wash or something,
yeah,
it's just a no-no. It's the access into it is a nightmare. It's one of the advantages of a normal rotary manual carousel, is you got full access to your screen, but it's much harder on a auto to get into it. Although the
yeah,
rock looks good because the head just
yeah,
comes right up, doesn't it?
that's it.
Yeah, we're going to end up with rocks. I can see it.
Yeah,
Although we love our Anatole, got to say,
yeah,
big plug for them. Anatole been very good for us, and a few teething problems getting it really well set up, but we worked it out. But yeah, we just love it. It's just a workhorse, and it's not let us down at all. We had one issue with a heat sensor in the rapid wave flash, which was just replaced. But from that, the press has just been gold.
okay.
Yeah.
Can you get a like a on the rocks they call them like a stampinator, but like um, a smoothing screen type thing for
You
them?
can. They've
Yep.
got two. We've just bought one of them, which is just a roller.
Yep.
So we sometimes use a flattening screen for hoodies here.
Okay.
And it's just the same as that. But they also have the heat press stampinator. We don't have that, but I'd quite like to get that.
Okay.
But you'll find that an auto, generally, you can't print anything smoother than what an auto will print. If
Yeah.
you've got your inks really well dialed in and the pressure's set up. So we'd really only use it for defibrillation of a garment that, is like a hoodie that's got too much polyester in it or something like that, really.
Yeah.
But
What
yeah, they've got all of those.
okay, yep. What's your process for printing hoodies? Because I sort of came and started offering my service sort of thing at the end, towards the end of winter, and I didn't get heaps of hoodies, but I didn't like them when the ones that I did. Uh, and it sounds like everyone hates hoodies, but for um, winter's going to be upon us pretty quick, I suppose. You got any tips for printing on hoodies manually?
Yeah, definitely. And look, it's the nightmare of all screen printers, definitely. Like every winter here, we're always going, oh, it'll soon be summer, don't worry.
Yeah.
And of course, you'll get like classic dark hoodie, big white print on the back, or a big blocky spot print on the front. Okay, so my tips for this, same thing really. Big thick stencil,
Okay.
reduce the ink a little bit, but obviously not enough to lose opacity, to make it easier to handle. Increase the off contact, perhaps a little bit more than you might think.
Okay.
And I'd say the biggest thing, once you've got all of those things set up, is slowing the actual speed of your print.
Right.
It's
Okay.
something that manually we don't think about very often. What you want is to allow that, because the biggest issue generally is that the hoodie will stick to the screen. Right?
Yeah.
It's a really big, thick, blocky print. If you increase the off contact that little bit more and just actually slow the stroke of your print down, you give it more time to come off. Now I know at the end you can, on a manual, can stand there and just slowly kind of prise it up. If that happens, reduce the mesh count as well, if that helps. You if it's a print flash print, you might go to that example I gave earlier where you use, I don't know, a 43T, let's say, for the underbase, but maybe only hit it once, or lightly on the second stroke, don't back flood, come around and drop the 77 or whatever it's going to be on the top. That may reduce the stickiness. Checking your flashing time. How long is it? You don't want to over flash on a hoodie, obviously, because it's going to shrink, but you don't want to under flash. Getting those pallets warm, it's the stuff we've talked about, really. But it's always like there are some hoodies that we won't print on now. Like we won't print on what is it, asphalt marl. It's got to be, I mean, because we'll put them through the oven, we'll do anything, to try and get them to shrink. But if you've got moldy colors on an asphalt marl, forget it.
Right.
Your registration could be beautiful, but it will shrink. On an auto, you tend to use more than one flash.
Yeah.
You have several flashes, which you'll need on certain types of prints, but you don't want that on a hoodie, So yeah, they're my tips for what it's worth.
Awesome.
All right, listen, we should call it a day, but a couple of things before we go. Your web address is northprint.com.au.
Yep.
People can see your amazing videos and obviously the work that you're doing to print on your Insta page, northprint.customclothing, I think.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right.
Yep.
I'll put those in the link as well. For now, thanks. It's been really, really good of you to come on. I know you've been needing to wait for a wet day just to get an hour or two spare, and I really appreciate it. It's great to meet you and see you and learn more about your journey. Thanks so much for being part of it. And let's catch up again another time in a few months and see how you're getting on.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having us on. I'll definitely come down and visit you guys at some point.
Yeah, do. Definitely.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Listen to all these podcasts from other parts of the world. It's pretty cool to have one in Australia. So
Australian one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to Britain and I'm hoping to interview some British screen printers this Christmas and New Year. But yeah, definitely want to make it Aussie because we just don't have enough chit chat between us all. So yeah, thanks for being part of it, Josh.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam.
Catch you later.
Cheers. Bye.